Indeed, sir. Your definition of Article 2, this document is based on the Article 2 of the Geneva Convention, and it has amplified all the areas of the definition within that and has proved and evidence that there is actually genocide in Kashmir. Soraya Boyd, now my next speaker. Please, Madam Boyd is the founder and CEO of Facilitate Global, a London-based human rights and a think tank organization promoting conflict prevention and one rule of law for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So good afternoon, salam alaikum. Good afternoon, salam alaikum, and thank you very much indeed to everyone who has been actively engaged in organizing this event. So I think in view of the time restrictions, I would like to say that in the case of Kashmir, it's definitely geography being favored over demography. And the current state with regard to curfews is nothing that Kashmiris aren't used to, but it's certainly the longest by far. The abrogation of Article 370 constitutes a definite violation of the Indian Constitution. And I think the misuse and abuse of the law, particularly when India defined itself as a democracy based on a hegemonic, exclusivist political premise, is by definition something that ought to alarm us all. It's not just discrimination, it's inherent racism, which has nothing to do with Hinduism. So Hindutva cannot be equated to Hinduism. The difficulty that we have, which arises, is that being a so-called democracy, it's now giving rise to an autocracy. So we need to make sure that the United Nations and every other formal institutions and organs do indeed honor their mandate in regards to promoting rule for all. The fact that the 2G bandwidth was restored, again, is something that should concern us, because it means that for every 9,500 potential users, there are only very few points of connection. So access to information is very difficult indeed, and with regard to the incarceration of elected government officials and human rights defenders, you wouldn't think this sort of thing would happen in a so-called democracy. You'd probably think dictatorship or autocracy. Obviously, the information is not intended to be available to the world. Journalists who have international, who work as international correspondents are not able to provide information. So the level of blackout is definitely very much something that is intended so as to keep the rest of the world in a state of disinformation and misinformation. Also, the current state of surveillance is very much inherent now and prevalent. So everybody is being kind of closely monitored. And as a matter of fact, returning back to news, India, according to the Reporters Without Borders, India ranked 140 out of 180 countries. So the information blackout is also a grave concern. So that is available through the report that was published with regard to world press freedom based on the index. What is quite hopeful and encouraging is that recently the UN Security Council held a session. It was the first since 1965, I think, exclusively focusing on Kashmir. And I think, Madam Minister, it was a great vindication on the position that Pakistan has taken with regard to urging the implementation of the plebiscite. And also, it really laid to rest the myth that Kashmir is an internal issue. So I'm speaking from the perspective of civil society, and of course we adopt a moral, ethical premise with a view to endeavouring to hold governments to account. So there are many reports that have been produced and that have been presented to the Human Rights Council with a view to keep it informed with regard to grave human rights violation. So I would urge the international community to ensure that an international inquiry is being held. And I think on that note I might have to stop my intervention.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Boyd, for that intervention. Absolutely correct. I think racism is the issue that we need to highlight. India should be termed as epicenter of racism. That's a thought that we should give a great deal, to be quite honest. Now, we